Hello world, welcome to Ctrl+Alt+Danominator. My name is Dan, and this is not the device, but it's the next best thing because it's actually got a bit of a story to it. This was the first smartphone I've ever owned. The phone that I had before this, well, I mean, oh, this guy's gonna get its own video one day. Yep, I was very late to the smartphone game, and at the time I got this, it was actually quite new. This is the Moto G Stylus from 2020, if you can believe it. And over the years, it's honestly not held up too poorly. I mean, obviously it's still pretty old and, ooh, look at that pretty animation. Sorry, I forgot what we were just talking about. The Moto G Stylus, or more simply called the Moto G Stylus, is a very interesting beast because I feel like it marks this perfect middle ground that most people could probably work with for a smartphone. Most people do not want to spend $800, $900, $1,000 on these things, and for the most part, when people get a new smartphone, that's not what they're doing. They're doing a plan trade or some kind of deal at their current carrier, or perhaps getting the phone on sale or doing a bundle with multiple of them. Or they're just buying the phone on credit, which, I mean, I wouldn't recommend. Look at how expensive these things can get. Have you seen what the Galaxy Trifold is expected to be priced at? Phones are pricey. So what do you do for someone who just needs a new phone and you want it to last longer and not break the bank? That's the question I've had to pose to myself recently. You see, as I got this phone in 2020, which honestly, despite being a couple of years behind on Android updates and can't get any more at this point, has otherwise held up pretty well, my parents got the Samsung Galaxy A10e, one each, and well, I mean, they're fine if you want a budget phone to do all of the things that you need a phone to do, call people, text people. Despite those phones absolutely doing those two things, my parents obviously use them for multiple more things because that's just where we're at this point. Smartphones do everything. I mean, there's a blessing and a curse to that, of course, but it's kind of a necessary evil at this point. I mean, we canceled our landline years ago. I got this in college, and honestly, was totally fine with that. I always had some kind of other device hanging around to do smart things for me, so I didn't need an extra smartphone. This thing could probably still be used by someone getting a smartphone for the first time because it would do the basics, and I mean, it wouldn't get a lot of app updates anymore, which would definitely be a problem. I believe this thing is stuck on like Android 11, which, yeah, not gonna use banking apps on this thing, but it's doing fine. The A10es, on the other hand, not really. I mean, if you think about it, Samsung makes so many kinds of phones that are either this size or smaller, or they have so many kinds of budget models. They've even got the fan editions, the FE phones for going in between mid-range and premium. They make every kind of phone imaginable, and they're still expensive. I've been trying to help my folks find a phone that would work for each one of them for a little while now. Been doing a fair amount of research because we didn't have any reason to change our current plan. We don't want to break bank and spend over $300, $400, $500 on new phones just because. And look, the A10es will still do the job that they're meant to do as phones, but when it comes to the smart aspect, they are majorly behind on software updates. The storages on both of them are running out rapidly. Performance is pretty terrible, and their battery life is really, really bad. Now, generally speaking, most phones nowadays, if they're around this size anyway, come with about a 5,000 milliamp hour battery, which usually gets you throughout the day. I mean, gosh, my S23 Ultra, which is still my main phone, that still gets me through the day. As a matter of fact, I actually haven't updated it past Android 13, which might be the reason the battery is still so good, but that's just my working crackpot theory. What I'm trying to say here is the A10es have got to go, and my folks have been talking to me about it for a little bit now. So I had to find a phone for my mom and my dad, and somehow I had to basically work within a very specific budget, which was about 200 to 300 bucks, which even for them is a lot. When you have to think about the general consumer, you have to assume that they're either willing to put their phone on credit and pay it off over time, or they don't want to spend a lot of money in general, which is how my folks are. And you know what? I'm honestly of the same mind. I don't want to, quote unquote, rent an electronic until I've finished paying it off and make it my main phone. That that's a little risky to me. I'm not really about that life. And so when it comes to finding a phone that would work for each one of them, that met all of their specific needs, I had a bit of an interesting challenge on my hands, but I think I managed to find the best one for each of them. Okay, so a couple of housekeeping things before I explain why I picked each phone that I picked. The Samsung Galaxy A10es have a couple of features that are considered, well, I guess the lower tier of a premium feature nowadays. So in other words, they have lower storage, but an expandable SD card slot, just like this Moto G Stylus does, and they both have a headphone jack. Now, my mom doesn't really care as much about this, but my dad does. And they both need a fair amount of storage, so I was hoping to get at least one of them an SD card slot, but if not, I was going to make sure that they at least both had a fair amount of storage. 256 gigabytes is probably what I would consider to be the standard for smartphones nowadays, and I think iPhones have finally started shipping with that. But to be fair, budget Androids tend to ship with very little, and then you just have to pay for the card yourself. I don't mind that personally, but I get why it can be frustrating for some people. At the very least, it's an option, but then again, the Ultra phones and pretty much every Samsung Galaxy S model has completely gotten rid of that feature and the headphone jack. The other big specific thing was size. My mom is very particular about the size of the phone she has. She wants them to be small, and from what I understand, iPhones used to have an option that was literally really, really little. It was basically Samsung Galaxy S size or maybe even a little smaller, and Apple killed that off. Actually, I think Samsung is the only one who makes a quote-unquote good phone that is still in that size range. And even then, it's not really that small, but it's very comparable to the A10e. It's just the Samsung Galaxy S series. That's like their standard size, I guess, if you want to call it that. Which is weird because the Samsung Galaxy Fan Editions, the A54s and A53s, and like all of their other random new phones lately, they're all big. That's not a selling point for my mom. The other thing was my dad specifically really wants the headphone jack. So as you can imagine, I had a fair amount of very specific demands to meet for both, and I did my best, and I think that these phones are going to be pretty great. So why have I been holding this Motorola as a placeholder for the entire time? Well, obviously it's because I wanted to show you that this still works. I love the Moto actions. They're so good when they work. Oh, don't look back there. Oh, don't stare into the abyss of cables. It stares back. Now, the reason I wanted to show you a Motorola first is because this is the first phone that I picked out. Honestly, it was probably the easiest choice. My dad does not mind having a bigger phone so long as it's still like pocketable. And, you know, we're jean wearers in the family. It's not a problem to put one of these in your pocket for the most part. However, Motorola phones are very, very tall. So fortunately, the only other thing that's going to make this slightly bigger is having a small case on it, but I'll show you those in a little bit. This is the Moto G Stylus from 2025, and wow, what a glow up, man. I am honestly really impressed what Motorola's been doing with these quote-unquote budget phones. They've still managed to keep the SD card slot. It still has the headphone jack. It has the stylus, which has actually gotten better from what I understand in recent years, partially because it's much harder to lose now the way that they've put it in there. And honestly, my dad's probably not going to use the stylus. However, the reason I got this one is because the Moto G Stylus is actually the best of the bunch. There's a whole Moto G series, Moto G Power, Play, Standard, and then the stylus, which is considered to be the best of them. It tends to have the best battery and processing power every year, so that's why I got this. And it did happen to be on sale, so we got this for exactly $300. And you know what? Honestly, I think it's worth it. These are tougher than they look, and having an extra case on it is going to help. Both phones are going to have a case and screen protector, by the way. I feel like I should mention that. But this phone has 256 gigs of storage on board, and I had to get an SD card for the other phone, the A10e. Guess how much those shipped with? 32 gigabytes of storage. I'm not joking, and that gets you nothing nowadays. So they both have cards in them. I'm going to be able to easily just pop that card over to this. The only thing that's going to be interesting is the fact that this is a Motorola being transferred from a Samsung. From what I understand, the biggest complication with that is that I won't be able to use Samsung Smart Switch, but I don't really care about that. There's a generic Android transfer thing. And the UI is going to be a little different because it's more of a standard Android skin, but my dad's not as specific with things like that. As long as the phone can call and text people and I'll show him what the differences are in the UI, he's pretty much good to go. So yeah, this was honestly the easiest choice. I knew as soon as I started talking to my dad about what his kinds of needs were, that this kind of phone would work perfectly fine. Actually, I have a friend who has the 2024 version of this, and it's in like this really nice red color, and it's holding up great for him. He still likes it. So I think that this guy, which I believe actually has a Snapdragon 6th gen something or other, I think it's gonna hold up pretty well, a lot better than my original G Stylus did. That thing did not have a great processor, but it did have a good battery. These tend to have all-day batteries, which I think is the best thing about them. And he tends to work outdoors. So I do believe as long as he's got the case and screen protector and then the ability to just plug in headphones to listen to music or use Bluetooth audio or whatever, I'm pretty sure he's gonna be set. And the performance on these has really improved over the last few years, so this was honestly a much easier choice. All right, what did I get for the picky one? I mean, I'm partially joking, but da-da-da-da. This is the Samsung Galaxy S23. Yeah, I know, I'm predictable. Look, Samsung is at the very least very comfortable for a lot of people, and I feel like it did make sense to get this size because, again, the fan editions of these phones are just a little too big for somebody like my mom who prefers to have this thing very easily reachable. And I mean, these phones are still great if you can find them open box, which is actually what I did. This guy came from eBay and it ended up being about $340, which is definitely more than what was preferred. But honestly, considering the condition this guy is in, like honestly, it really does look brand new. And despite the fact that it is like a pinkish hue, it's pretty muted, and then we're gonna put a case on it. I feel like this is a great choice for her. My mom definitely likes the Samsung ecosystem, or at the very least the UI of it, so she prefers it to stay familiar. And I wanted to get her a phone that is going to keep up with her more than, I guess, a standard Galaxy A phone. And granted, there are some good A models out now, I guess, but again, they're much bigger, and they've gotten rid of the headphone jack and the SD card slot anyway. All right. Yeah, I guess we should talk about that. So unfortunately, this thing does not have those two features. They killed off those very, very early. I believe it was the Note 10 or like the first Ultra phone is when they started getting rid of it on the S phones. So that is going to be a foregone feature on this phone. However, I did manage to find this in 256 gigabytes of storage, which is way better than what she had before. I believe it was the 32 on board plus a 64 gigabyte card, or it might have been 128. But in other words, she's gonna have a lot more space now, which is great because these things take great pictures, and she's always had to come to me for the S23 Ultra to get the best pictures when we do, like, you know, family photos and stuff. That's what I ended up getting, and both of these ended up being in the 300-400 range instead of, well, getting a new S25 or 4 for about still $800 or $900, which honestly, I think that's a bargain. Now, I do wish I could have gone to a pawn shop and seen this one in person, but unfortunately the local ones that I trust and the ones that I love, they don't sell phones anymore because they've gotten so many sent to them that were locked or something or had a previous account on them, so they just stopped buying them. The Samsung Tab S7 that I've covered on this channel, that was bought at a pawn shop, but they don't buy phones anymore, so I couldn't just go up and see an open box phone in person, which is normally what I prefer to do, so admittedly I took a gamble on this. And when you get a phone like this, you want to make sure that the seller is reputable and that they accept returns, but this thing has seemed very good so far. I have to do a little setup with it, but then I'm going to put the case on it, of course, and then the screen protector, and we're pretty much going to be good to go. Did mention I was going to show the cases that I decided to get for both of them. This is a clear case, but the reason that I got it is because it has that kickstand. My mom and I love having kickstands on our phones that can go both portrait and landscape, and this is the best one for that. Actually, the current kickstand on my S23 Ultra is the same brand, I believe. It's called like an ESR Boost. You can just buy it separately and stick it on the back of your phone. I stuck it on the case that I currently use. And then this is just a standard spec case, but both of these are drop resistant, and that's honestly the most important bit. I believe both of these phones have some water resistance, which is pretty important to me at the very least, but I think the only phones we've had that weren't water resistant were the A10es they currently have, and they didn't manage to kill those in 5 years, so I don't think it's gonna be a problem. So yeah, there you have it, the two phones I picked out for my parents. And I'm honestly looking forward to seeing how these hold up over time. I know the S23 Ultra isn't going to get nearly as many updates as the Moto G Stylus, But that doesn't really matter because Moto phones tend to get their updates very late. And even so, as long as the Android version on this is stable and it does the job, I don't think it's going to be a major issue, because they've had these older phones that are probably way less secure by now and can't even get updates or use banking apps for half of the stuff they use. They're still fine, and again, I tend to keep my folks as tech savvy as possible so that they at the very least understand basic stuff and, you know, be careful on the internet, use an ad blocker, take care of your phones and your tech, and clean everything out when you can every now and then. So these I think are going to be great fits for them, but maybe in a year or two I'll do like a follow-up video and see how these have held up. I know this was a bit of a shorter video, but honestly, I'm just looking forward to seeing how these hold up for my parents over time, to see how closely my matches were for each of them to have quote-unquote the perfect phone, and especially without spending what you would normally charge for a premium option. And I know that there's a bit of a battery difference in this one. This one has the worst battery. This one has the technically worst processor. But here's the thing. While you guys are probably watching this as tech enthusiasts, and who knows, maybe you guys also have a bunch of different kinds of gadgets that you like to juggle between, most common consumers don't. They're not power users. They're not multitasking on these things. That's the extra. That's the bonus. You know, my mom's not going to plug this into a screen and use Samsung DeX. My dad is never going to pull this stylus out, but these phones are at the very least reputable, and they have lasted well in the review period that they were in and still work well today. So I believe that these are the best options for them, but I guess we'll have to see how it goes. So until my next video, this has been Ctrl+Alt+Danominator. Thank you for watching, and see you next device.